So our topic today will be hair and hair growth, structure of the hair, function, and supplements that can stimulate hair growth. When you chose this topic last month, I asked you to email me with your ideas and proposals and questions. And so what I did was try to find research that would confirm or disconfirm your ideas about what might cause hair growth. There were also a few questions that asked me to say a few things about what our hair is for and why some hair is smooth, why some hair isn't smooth, what hair is made of, and things like that. So we will address these topics too. Actually, we'll start from them and then go towards more specific topics. If you like, I'm sure that there will be things that I didn't manage to cover in this webinar. And if you like, we can always create another webinar that deals with this topic. I will put that next time in the poll, and then you can send me more questions and requests, and we will address those as well. My apologies. Also make sure to vote. I see that not everyone has voted yet. And then once I'm done with the webinar, I will close the polling, and then we'll see what we will talk about in August. Because I'm not feeling well, I don't think we can have a long Q&A today. But I have set aside some time tomorrow, several hours actually. So you can email me all your questions and I will answer them all. I underscore all of them tomorrow. So by all means, you will have my email address in the end. Email me all the questions that you have. So now that I'm done with the preliminaries, let's get started with the webinar. So here are the topics that we will cover. First, we will talk about hair structure and function. So what is it composed of, and what happens when you pull your hair, and then also what is it that hair is supposed to do anyway. We'll talk about the growth cycles of different types of hair in our bodies. We'll talk about smoothness and appearance of hair. This, I think, maybe deserves its own webinar. I will address it just briefly, and then we will go over all the supplements that you wanted to know about. And I will present the studies that I found that show whether or not they're effective, and if they are, in what way, and what you can expect to get by using them. I will also give you a few general advice that we know from studies that can help or hurt, so that you can avoid. Oh, I see someone is asking a question. Where can I find the recorded video after? It's 2 a.m. in my country and I need to sleep. Oh gosh. Well, thank you for staying up for so long. That's what I call dedication. I will upload the webinar on our YouTube channel tomorrow. So it should be available tomorrow. I think by 3 or 4 p.m. Eastern time. You will also receive an email since you registered with the link in case you can't find it on YouTube, but it will be available tomorrow. So let's, without further ado, let's continue with this. So first, let's define what hair is. Like, it's something that we can all point to, but it's not necessarily as easy to define. So hair is actually just filaments of protein. Hair doesn't contain any cells in it. Hair is not alive. So they're just strands, filaments of proteins growing from follicles that are found in the dermis, which is like the second layer of the skin, right beneath epidermis. I will show you an image that will hopefully make this clearer. So keep in mind that when we're talking about hair, we're not talking about live tissue. We're really talking about just strands of proteins, nothing more. The protein that makes up our hair is called alpha keratin. And that's pretty much all there is to say about what hair is made of. All of it is made of alpha keratin. Hair can come with different thickness and different textures. Typically speaking, we can differentiate between terminal hair, which is, for example, the hair on your scalp, the more thicker hair, and then the vellus hair, which are those kind of like peach fuzz hairs, the very gentle short hairs. This distinction is important because when you look at them under the microscope, they don't look the same. They also don't grow at the same rate, although technically speaking, they do perform the same function. An average adult has between 80,000 and 120,000 hair follicles on their head alone, on the scalp. Overall, by week, I believe 22 of pregnancy, already we have about 5 million hair follicles formed. And then as our life progresses, they tend to go away. Uh, the loss of follicles is usually not massive for most people, but you don't get more follicles than what you're born with. It's all downhill from there. Sometimes we might think so. Between 80 and 120,000 on our scalp uh, can remain stable for most people throughout their lives. But sometimes, as we grow up, it may seem like our hair is becoming less dense and thinner, and this is not necessarily because that's what's happening. Sometimes, as we grow up, our heads grow, which means that our skin has to stretch, and then the distance between hair follicles becomes bigger. So there is an illusion of sorts that sometimes our hair is thinning out, whereas really we have the same number of follicles. In that case, no matter what kind of supplement you decide to use, uh, you can't really change or improve this very much. One other piece of information that I thought was interesting and kind of terrifying, which is that in 24 hours, we lose about 70 to 100 hairs spontaneously, naturally, just because their life cycle has ended. So even without pulling, um, you also lose about 100 hairs per day. So I'm going to show you now what our hair actually looks like. I see someone is asking me to set up CC. I have absolutely no idea how to do that. I can try and ask our tech support if that's possible at all, and then if we can, I will happily do that. So, anyways, this is what a hair looks like. So, uh, the area above the epidermis, what sticks out of your skin, is what you naturally see. But as you can see, there's quite a lot of stuff going on and quite a lot of parts underneath the skin. So let's break that down a little bit. So the hair itself is, as I said, contains only protein. So there's nothing alive in that hair there. But as you can see, the hair goes into this little tunnel that extends all the way through epidermis and then through dermis and then sometimes even into this area of subcutaneous fat. So every hair at its bottom is connected to a blood vessel, and it has a small network of capillaries inside the hair papilla, this area here. It has a nerve connected to it. It even has a muscle connected to it. This muscle here, I hope you can see my pointer. So what this muscle does is when it contracts, it pulls the whole hair bulb to the right, and then the hair on the surface stands up. So the purpose of this muscle is to make your hairs stand up, to have goosebumps, basically. Because believe it or not, goosebumps are actually a way of regulating your body temperature. When things get cold, your hairs stand up, and that keeps that kind of traps the hot air nearer to your skin. So you need your hair to have good body temperature regulation. Another important function that hair performs, as since I'm here already, especially the hair on the eyelashes and eyebrows, is that it actually protects our bodies from mechanical injury. Uh, your eyelashes will protect the really very delicate layers of cells in your eyes, and so will your eyebrows by containing all the dust and everything that's in the air within them. Hair also acts as a kind of sensory organ. which it can do thanks to these nerve endings that touch the hair. So it's the yellow strand here on the left side. So I said within this tunnel where hair through which the hair grows out, there's also a sebaceous gland that at some point joins in and secretes sebum, which then gets out on the surface of the skin. Sebum, as disgusting as it may sound to think of it, actually is very, very important. It helps protect your skin from excessive humidity. It also has anti-inflammatory properties, so it keeps your skin healthy, and it has antibacterial properties, which means that it kills excessive bacteria that accumulate on the surface of your skin. So having this tunnel and this whole apparatus intact is really important for a variety of reasons, right? I said that this hair is dead. Not all of it is dead, in fact. If you go down, 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 down towards the root of the hair, which would be this area here with the blood vessels, the kind of lighter colored area around it contains the hair bulb. When you pull the hair out, that's the white part in the end that's kind of tender and sometimes cooler and even stickier. That's this part here. This contains cells that produce alpha keratin, and these cells tend to divide and reproduce very quickly. They're some of the fastest dividing cells in our bodies. This part here is incredibly important because once the hair completes its natural living cycle, or once it's pulled out, it's this it's this area under the bulb that helps the bulb regenerate. So if this area here is damaged, that's what actually makes it difficult and sometimes, although rarely, impossible to have regrowth in this area. If there's just damage but not complete destruction, then it'll take the hair will grow back. It just will take some time because this area takes quite a while to regenerate. Another thing that's important to keep in mind is that once you pull a hair, whether you pull the bulb out or not, what you're actually creating here is some degree of cellular damage. So you will scratch this little tunnel, you will damage this very root of the hair, you will damage the cells here. And when this happens, a small amount of inflammation can be caused. These blood vessels can dilate, and then certain cells that comprise your immune system will have to enter here to clean up the debris, because our bodies can't just leave dead cells and damaged tissues in place. In order to replace them, you have to remove all the damage that has been done. So this can cause a little bit of inflammation. And then when you look, but that inflammation is not necessarily bacterial. It's just a cleanup job that your body does. This can itch a little bit, which some people can then interpret as the urge to pull even more. And the reason why it itches is because these nerve endings right here on the left get irritated once this area becomes swollen. When blood vessels dilate, liquid fills out this area, so it becomes swollen, and then cells can come in and do the cleanup job before any healing and regeneration can start. When you look at your skin from the surface, what you will see is just a little bit of redness around the place where your hair used to be, around the shaft here. And then that alone can also be triggering for people, whereas that is just your body's attempt to remedy the damage that you did while you were pulling the hair. So that's what a typical hair is structured like. Now I'm going to show you what hair looks like under the scanning electron microscope, so that you can see when you amplify thousands of times the surface of one hair, what that looks like. If you think it might be triggering, you may want to look away or close your eyes. I will be quick, and then I will tell you when it's okay to open your eyes. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, so it's not smooth at all. It has a lot of these irregular areas. All of these are just layers and layers of alpha keratin, the protein that I mentioned. The idea that our hair is ever completely smooth is false. This is just a normal, typical, undamaged strand of hair. And look how many of these kind of patchy areas it has. This obviously every hair will look different, and we don't actually know why some hairs appear smoother and why some hairs tend to be rougher when we touch them. There's really no good explanation for this. I have looked initially. I thought that maybe when I was in medical school, we just didn't know the explanation. And then I tried to look for it, and I really didn't find any satisfactory explanation. And then when I started looking at these scanning electron microscope pictures of the hair, I realized that hair is actually never smooth. It's just the matter of how coarse it is, of the degrees of coarseness. I'm going to switch the slides now. The reason why so you can look back if you looked away. The reason why I put this is to show that nature actually doesn't know and care about our human ideas about what something should look like. Uh, Nature doesn't know what perfect is, and nature doesn't know what beautiful is. What's beautiful and what's perfect is determined by us humans. So we have preferences in terms of what is what is beautiful hair. This is obviously culturally dependent. Sometimes it depends on the families that we grow up in, the role models we've had, the people we admired when we were young, our personal ideas of beauty. But our bodies don't care about any of this. I don't think anyone has ever said, just think about there are some areas on our bodies where we will have these aesthetic ideas about what they're supposed to look like. Uh, Skin and hair being probably the biggest ones. Eyes also, I've seen people tend to think certain color of some, of eyes is prettier than some others. But our bodies, frankly, don't care about this. The only thing that biology is concerned with is whether or not something works. And hair, in terms of the functions that I listed, works whether it's smooth and whether it's coarse. I'm saying this because it's important that you're aware that every time you make a judgment about some hair being out of place or growing in a direction that you don't find pleasing for some reason, this has nothing to do with your organism and it has nothing to do with your body. Your body works just fine. These are ideas that you have formed or learned from your family or your culture. And here's like these two images I think show very nicely how that operates. Now, on the left, obviously, this is a Mark Rothko painting. It's kind of unmistakable. And this on the right is a photo I took, well, just before I got COVID. This is from Padua. This is a famous chapel painted by Giotto, and here in the end, on the wall of the chapel, is his very very famous fresco called "The Final Judgment." It's truly stunning. So, for some people, might look at this chapel on the right, Cappella dei Scrovegni. That's how it's called in Italian. As you can see, I had the pleasure of entering first and seeing it empty, which is a really unusual experience because what they usually do, they will let 15 to 20 people in. You have 15 minutes and then they kick you out. They're very protective of it because they have to preserve it in special conditions. And then when there are too many people breathing inside, it tends to create a humid environment and then it damages the paintings. So it's even if you're not religious, it is in a way a religious experience to be there. It's truly sublime. But some people might look at this on the right and say, well, that's really beautiful, whereas this one on the left sucks and my child could do it. To be clear, your child probably couldn't do it. Otherwise, your child would be called Mark Rothko. There's a lot of effort and thinking that goes into this. But we say these things because we have preferences based on our, I don't know, ideas about what beauty is. None of this is important to your body. So whether your body will produce hair of equal thickness, it doesn't care. Your body needs hair for sensation, for thermoregulation. It needs your hair for protection. But for your hair to perform its natural functions, it really doesn't have to look any particular way. So please keep that in mind. And then whenever I know that a lot of you are sensitive to specific textures or how hair looks, in what direction it grows, and whether something stands out, and so on. Whenever you want to think about that and really understand how that works, the best thing to do is to move away from whether or not that's good hair. It's hair, therefore it's good hair. For for alpha keratin to be good, it doesn't have to be shaped in any particular way. Think of it in terms of, this is something that I've either internalized from my environment or something that arose from my lived experience, but it has nothing to do with my biology. This is really important to separate this. Otherwise, what you end up doing is developing a very unhealthy relationship to your body and specifically to your hair, whereas your hair is truly not to blame. And your ideas and ways of thinking are, if we have to locate the blame anywhere. As I said, this is kind of on topic, but also off topic. But I was told to address this, so here I am addressing it. We don't actually understand, biologically speaking, why some hair will be thicker and some might be thinner. But it doesn't even matter, because it's not a matter. It's not that thicker hair is bad and thin hair is good, or vice versa. Hair, regardless of what it's shaped like, does its job perfectly well. Okay, so let's talk about hair pulling and regrowth, because this was requested by at least 9 or 10 people. So uh, even when the follicle is damaged, hair after pulling will typically grow back, although it takes more time. I have to say, I have seen cases where hair doesn't grow back, but the fact that hair didn't grow back in a year or 2 or 3, as you will see, sometimes it takes even longer. It doesn't mean that it won't grow back. It just means that it takes a lot of time for the follicles to regenerate, especially when you pull them out repeatedly. Because the mechanical injury that happens when you pull them out is sometimes, let's say, supplemented by maybe a overly intense cleanup job that our body does. So when this is done repeatedly, our bodies and we become sloppy, so we cause rather serious damage to the hair follicle. Now, here are some regrowth timelines that are averages and that you can have in mind when you're thinking how long it might need for your hair to grow back. As you can see, different body parts have very, very different rates of growth. So hair on your scalp can grow about 6 inches per year. So for those of you who are not from the States, 6 inches would be like maybe 16, 17 centimeters. Yeah, something like that. And one hair can grow, its lifespan is about 8 years. So if you don't pull your hair, each of them on your scalp will live up to 8 years. Eyelashes and eyebrows are slightly different, and regrowth can vary between 1 and 6 months. So they have a certain size that they reach, they fall off, or if you pull them out, you can expect them to grow back in this interval within 6 months. Other body hairs can all grow back on average in 3 to 6 months. For some people, obviously, I'm talking about averages. So for some people, this might be faster, whereas for others, it might be slower. It depends on how long you've been pulling, how long you've been pulling in that specific area, and how frequently you actually allow regrowth to happen, or rather, whether you ever pause with pulling. Now, there's a general rule that thicker hair grows faster. On average, it's 1 centimeter, which is a little less than half an inch per month. That is the average growth rate for thick hairs. Regular hair, regular hair pulling may cause these timelines to be slightly different. And this will probably be the case if you've been pulling from the same region for a very, very long period of time. Because of the extensive damage that is and scarring that happens inside the follicles, it takes a very long time for them to recover. So sometimes a bald patch can be present for up to 4 years before hair finally starts growing back. Because I took these numbers from obviously from studies and textbooks that I've read, I reached out to a friend of mine who's a dermatologist, and he said that this is in fact true, and that he also believes that in some cases the damage might be so extensive that the follicle just ends up destroyed, and that hair simply doesn't grow back. Although, according to him, it takes a lot of damage for this to happen. So the numbers might seem like too long or the growth might seem too slow, but the fact that you almost certainly can grow your hair back should you give it enough time to recover, I feel is a motivating thing. You may need to abstain from pulling for a long time, but your hair will eventually start growing back. From what we can see, gender doesn't make any difference in terms of how quickly your hair grows back. I found some studies that deal with racial and ethnic differences. And first of all, I was surprised that anyone actually cared. For example, I found one study that compared the French and the Chinese and how quickly their hair grows back. And I read that and I thought, what a ridiculous race this is to have. But so the bottom line is I'm not going to present any results because I have found studies that show quite literally everything you want. So some papers will say that overall Europeans tend to grow back their hair faster, but then this weird study that just compared the French and the Chinese apparently said that it's the other way around, that Chinese hair grows faster than French hair. I don't think it makes a difference, and I have to say I'm highly entertained by by the idea that someone would actually want to compare things like this. But we live in a strange world. But overall, the results are inconsistent. And when results are inconsistent and there are dozens and dozens of studies, it usually means that there's really no significant difference. And whatever your race or ethnicity might be, these timelines likely apply to you. So you can take these numbers as general orientation or whatever gender you may be. Um, so here's how hair growth cycle looks like. Every hair goes through 3 stages in its growth. This is important because when we take a look at the supplements in just a minute, this will be important because different supplements might act on different stages in the development of a hair. And as you will see, not everything is equally important for a hair pulling. Some authors separate 4 stages as well. I didn't, just for the sake of simplicity, but I will tell you what the fourth stage is according to them. It's not that difficult to understand. So the first stage is the anagen phase or stage. It can last 3 to 5 years, so it's quite a long stage. And during this phase, cells reproduce in the germinative layer. Let me go back a few slides and show you what that actually means. Here it is. It's this hair bulb. That's what it is. So here the cells will reproduce and create a lot of alpha keratin, which means that the hair will grow out very quickly. So this is a stage of active. This is a stage of active hair growth. And at any given point, about 90% of all our hairs are in this stage of growth. So almost all of your hair that you have right now is in this growing stage. The second stage, or the catagen stage, takes only about 2 weeks. So it's a very, very short stage. And in this stage, the hair bulb starts shrinking. So I should have put that picture here. So the hair bulb would be the white thing at the end of a hair when you pull it out entirely. This starts shrinking and slightly changes color as well because it loses a lot of water. So it becomes a little darker and it loses that kind of soft feeling to it. As this is happening, more and more space is created in the hair follicle because and the hair gets a little looser. Eventually, at the end of this stage, the bulb shrinks so much that it actually detaches from the capillaries, so your hair loses its blood supply. That means that this is the end of the active growth of a hair. Because without, obviously, without the blood supply, you cannot synthesize alpha keratin, so you can't create any new hair, so it won't get any longer. The hair still stays attached, it's just not vascularized, so there's no blood flow. I'm pretty sure that if you think about what pulling feels like in one stage or the other, that you will find that there are differences, because the hairs in this second stage will be will be easier to pull out, since the bulb is narrower and smaller overall, and it's no longer connected to the very bottom of the hair follicle, where the blood vessels are and where the germinative layer is, those cells that will help create a new hair. But at the end of this stage, your hair is still connected to your scalp or wherever in your body. And then comes the telogen phase, where the follicle kind of stays there dormant. But because it is so small and because it shrunk so much, the hair is not actually stable anymore. So it can kind of move around up or down, left or right. And it's only kept in place by the surrounding cells. Because the canal through which the hair has to go out is narrow, and that's basically the only thing that's keeping the hair in place. In effect, this hair is, while it's in telogen phase, it's just waiting to fall out. And then some authors say that shedding, when the hair falls out, is the fourth stage. But for me, I feel like it's just a completion of the third stage. I don't think it makes much of a difference, especially for us, since we're not hair researchers. So as you can see, for most of its lifetime, your hair is actually in the stage of active growth. And then slowly it loses its blood supply, and then it falls out. When you pull out hairs that are in the active stage of growth, this is where, let's say, quote unquote, the problem with regrowth arises. When you pull a hair that is in the third stage, you're actually not interfering with your normal hair growth cycle, because this hair has already detached and it's basically just held in place because it's stuck between cells. So when you pull it out, it really makes no difference. Your hair follicle will start producing new alpha keratin after a while and enter the first anagen stage normally. The second stage also isn't very problematic, but the first stage can pose a problem. And these hairs are the ones that when you pull out, they have that white kind of thing in the end. The reason why this is troubling for hair growth is because you're removing a hair that is still in the stage of growth. So you're resetting the cycle, you're causing the damage to the follicle, and then that means that this hair follicle will remain inactive much longer than it normally would. Because when you pull out a hair in this third cycle, in this third phase here, nothing happens. It'll just continue to grow another hair when hormones tell it to do so. Whereas if you do it in the anagen stage, first it'll have some whole follicle will have to heal, it'll have to recover, and then it will start growing again. But and it can also stay inactive for a long period of time, depending on how much damage you do. Unfortunately, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to control the damage, and it's also very difficult to say just by looking at your hair what stage of growth it's in. But when overall, because over 90% of our hairs are in this first stage of growth, chances are that you are making it more difficult for hair regrowth anyway. But I just wanted to present this so that you understand how the hair grows, and also so that you can understand what is it that you're pulling might do to to your chances and timelines for regrowth. I'm sorry for the cough. So let's take a look at some general factors that are influencing hair growth in one way or another, and then we'll take a look at the specific things you asked me about, and we'll take a look at some studies that I found that test out these products. So, first of all, if you're frequently on diets, that might lead to increased hair loss, and it will certainly slow down your hair growth. The more restrictive the diet, the slower the regrowth will be. This is because your body needs a lot of amino acids to create hair, since proteins are really just strands of amino acids that are connected one to another. So amino acids are very valuable to our bodies. When you eat, your body redistributes these based on need, not your hair can't just artificially grab all these amino acids and say, I want to grow now, so I'll take the amino acids. It doesn't work that way. Our bodies have very strict priorities in terms of where each nutrient goes. When you have a restrictive diet, when you reduce carbs, or especially when you reduce proteins, because obviously that's what hair is not on the a top priority for our bodies, to put it mildly. In fact, that's the last place where amino acids will go. So you can eat a piece of meat that contains all the right amino acids, and chances are, if you're on a diet, none of this will go towards your hair. So all of it will go to other parts of your body where it's more important to be present and has a more vital function. So restrictive diets will for sure slow down your hair growth, and sometimes might actually increase it. Even if you don't pull, your hair might start to fall out when you're on a diet. There are some vitamins that might help you with hair growth. Those are vitamins C, D, E, some vitamins B, then metals like zinc and iron. For example, when people have anemia, which happens, it's not even that rare for while you have your period, you lose a lot of iron, with the bleeding every month. So sometimes, even if you don't have any particular problem, you can still lose a lot of iron. And this will not only slow down your hair growth, it will actually lead to your hair falling off. Hair loss is sometimes a sign of anemia, actually. It's like one of the first symptoms. And then omega-3 acids can help stimulate hair growth. So remember that. Vitamins C, D, E, and zinc. And then we'll talk more about zinc later, because not all of its effects, this here refers to taking zinc as a supplement. And we will take a look at a study that used zinc as a cream that you put on your head, and it works in different ways. Also, if you plan to use any of these supplements and you're taking any other medication, or you have a chronic condition, please consult your doctors. For example, even though vitamins are normal, important, and even necessary for our functioning, vitamin C, for example, isn't always recommended in every dosage for everyone, especially if you have conditions that make your blood clot very easily. So you won't necessarily, it won't be okay for you to take too much vitamin C. There's also a connection between zinc and iron that is very important for you to know. If you want to supplement, and I'm saying this because I've heard this many times over the years from clients. If you take zinc, we need very small amounts of zinc. So supplementation with zinc usually involves very small amounts. Like if you take any multivitamin, it will have just enough zinc as you need. If you can buy, I think I saw like zinc tablets at CVS maybe. I really love CVS. I could spend hours browsing through their weird collection of supplements. But my point is that if you take too much zinc, it might actually lower your iron levels. So you don't want to cause anemia just because you are eager to help your hair grow back. For many reasons, among them that anemia will actually be a setback for you. So these two need to be balanced properly. And as far as omega-3 goes, it is healthy for your blood vessels as well. So and it's a relatively safe supplement. So that's something that you can use. Avoid heat exposure. And this is really important. Um, by avoiding heat exposure, I mean that there are studies that show that people who spend a lot of time in the sun tend to have slower hair regrowth, and this can be prevented. Apparently, I found one study. I didn't include the citation here, just not to make the slide too complicated. But I found one study that indicates that if you use a product to protect your hair in the sun, kind of like sunscreen for hair, apparently that exists, that will help your hair continue to grow longer. So it will stay in that first stage much longer. Uh, Exercise, because it has an effect on your stress levels, will promote hair growth. One of the reasons why hair might not grow back as fast and why you actually might lose hair is stress. There are types of hair loss problems in dermatology that are explicitly related to stress. Usually, this doesn't happen at the time when the stressor occurs, but it happens a couple of months, even a year later. So you can experience a very stressful event, or have a period of your life when you're under intense stress, and your hair can be fine. And then even when the stressors go away, then your hair might start falling out. Sometimes this looks very dramatic. I remember when I was just beginning as a therapist, I had a client who lost almost all of her hair after about 8 months after her mother died. She was very deeply attached to her mother. So intense stress can lead to hair loss. Exercise is one way to counter that stress. And also exercise obviously improves circulation, which means that your hair follicles will be well fed with nutrients, which again helps with hair growth. Regularly trimming your hair actually stimulates hair growth as well. And then one thing that you can do to help your hair grow longer and to help new growth is to actually air dry your hair. When you by air dry, I mean just use a towel to kind of soak up the excess water and then allow your hair to naturally dry. This is because you're avoiding basically the heat exposure from the my God, this COVID thing is really annoying. Whatever you use to dry your hair dryer. What a complicated word that was. So when excessive heat exposure can damage your hair and then also damage the follicles, so air drying your hair is very helpful. Now let's take a look at some specific things that you've asked me about. If I'm, I don't You will see that a lot of these studies and a lot of the evidence for the effectiveness of some of these supplements are at best iffy. Uh, they sound promising, but if anything, they tell us that we need to do more research. And I think if this is not your first webinar, you are probably aware of the problem of the lack of research in this area. But one drug that we know that works for sure is minoxidil. It's sold in two versions, 2% and 5% solutions. So you can use it as a spray and then spray it on the area where you need hair growth. First, it was, I think, late 80s when FDA approved the 2% solution, and then sometimes in the mid 90s, they approved the 5% solution. So both of these have been in use for a couple of decades, so we know that they really are effective. There are quite a few studies out there showing their effectiveness in terms of hair growth. This has a bit of an interesting history, so pardon the digression, it'll take just a minute. But minoxidil was not created to be a drug that's supposed to help with hair growth. In fact, in the 70s, it was developed as a medication to regulate blood pressure. And it does so very well. If you take it orally, it will lower your blood pressure. But then, as they were testing the drug, they noticed that a very peculiar side effect began to appear, which is hypertrichosis, meaning that all the patients in the study became extremely hairy. Even where they didn't have hair, hair would now start appearing. So, the way that pharmaceutical companies think is okay, so we can't have werewolf like people with normal blood pressure, but we can certainly use this to stimulate hair growth. And so they rebranded minoxidil as a hair growth supplement or medication, rather, even though originally that's not what it was meant to do. We don't exactly know why it causes hair growth. There are several ideas and theories about it. um, but we don't actually know for sure. What's been observed is that it increases the anagen phase of hair growth, like that first one, which is the one that you need to activate and make as long and as efficient as possible. And it's very likely due to its effects on vasodilation, which means that it kind of expands your blood vessels. When your blood vessels open up, especially the capillaries, a lot of the water from your circulatory system goes from your blood vessels into your tissues, and then there's less overall content in the blood vessels, which is what leads to your blood pressure being reduced. And in this case, it appears that the blood vessels it dilates are specifically close to hair follicles, so it induces hair growth. Although this is just an assumption, there are other assumptions as well. We don't really have any evidence to confirm any of these. However, what we do know is that it works and that it works very well. Um, it's safe, although sometimes it can cause dermatitis. So your hair might become not your hair, pardon me. Your skin can become a little red, and sometimes even scaly. It may look like you have dandruff, let's say. This doesn't happen in many patients. So for most people, this is very safe. This is the second line here is a quote from this study that you see here in the upper right corner. It says that the medication affects follicular cells, those cells that will eventually create the bulb and then generate alpha keratin. So it's right in the center, exactly what we want, by enhancing hair growth and reducing hair loss. So it will make the anagen phase longer, which means that your hair will stay in your skin, and it will continue to grow for longer periods of time, and it will enhance hair growth, right? So what was once hypertrichosis or excessive hairiness, an unpleasant side effect of a blood pressure medication, now becomes the desired effect, or rather it induces hair growth. However, and keep this in mind so you don't get disappointed, once you stop taking minoxidil, within 12 to 24 weeks, chances are that there will be progressive hair loss in those areas where you've used it. It appears that it only works while you're actually using it. Luckily, it's not dangerous, so you can continue to use it, but just keep that fact in mind. If in the meantime you've stopped pulling, um, it will not have a dramatic effect because your hair will simply continue to regenerate. But it has this effect that once you stop using it, its effects are spontaneously and slowly reversed. I mean, 24 weeks is almost 6 months, so it's not a short period of time. It's not like your hair will start falling off very quickly. But once you stop using it, it will also stop the hair growth. So it has a very temporary effect, but it is very effective. It's possibly, of all the things that I will show you, this is the one that we know the best, we've used the longest, and seems to be the most effective one, with this one little drawback. I was asked about antioxidants. So here's a study here that had the clients try out antioxidants for 24 weeks in the form of topical preparations, so creams and shampoos. Some of the substances that they use are listed here on the left. They include zinc, different molecules of zinc, and also caffeine and niacin. What this study showed was that antioxidants lead to less shedding. So your hair is less likely to fall out spontaneously at the end of its life cycle, to put it that way. But it will not stimulate hair growth. I mean, antioxidants have their own benefits, but if, two people asked me about this. So the answer is that it will lead to less shedding, but it will not promote hair growth. So it's not going to help the damaged follicles heal faster, and it's certainly not going to induce the anagen phase of hair growth. So I looked up another study just to make sure that this is not a one-off. I found an 8-week study that also confirms these results. So antioxidants are good for many things. They will reduce hair loss, but they will not induce new hair growth. So when we're talking about regrowing your hair, this is not the way to go. I found a study that actually studied pumpkin seed, specifically pumpkin seed oil, and it compared it to minoxidil and the stronger, more effective solution, so the 5% solution. And this was specifically tested in female patients, and this is a randomized comparative trial. Uh, my problem with this is that it's a very small study. It only includes 60 participants. So 30 participants who were given pumpkin seed oil to use, and then 30 participants who were given minoxidil. This is barely enough for reliable statistics. So what we can conclude from this study is that we need to do more research. However, pumpkin seed oil is neither toxic nor damaging in any way, and it's unlikely that if it doesn't help, it's unlikely that it will harm you. This study was 3 months long, and results apparently suggest that pumpkin seed is almost as effective as minoxidil. I think this is a freely available study, so you can read the whole thing. Um, because they give specific numbers that I can't recall now and reproduce exactly. If you want to try out pumpkin seed oil, you can. It's used topically, so you actually put it on the bald patches. However, please keep one thing in mind. Don't put this on large surfaces right away. When it comes to these supplements that are applied locally, you never know how your skin might react. So it's a good idea to choose a visible and easily accessible area of your skin and then apply that, for, I don't know, like a very, very small amount on a small surface of the skin. And then if there's no itching, if there's no redness, no irritation, no swelling, you can actually use it then on larger surfaces just to make sure that there are no allergic reactions. I'm not familiar with the fact that someone can have an allergic reaction from pumpkin seed oil, but just because I'm not familiar with it doesn't mean that it can't happen. People can be allergic to all sorts of things. So make sure to first try it out like that and see if it's safe. So as you can see, this is a very recent study. It was published last year, about a year and a couple of months ago. So a lot of follow-up work needs to be done here so that we can say with certainty that pumpkin seed actually does help. The results are promising. If it's almost as effective as minoxidil, that is a big deal. It's just that we don't know if that is the case yet. I was also asked about rosemary oil. I found this study where rosemary oil was compared to minoxidil, but the 2% solution. And this was not for hair pulling, but it was for androgenetic alopecia. So it does involve hair loss. They had 100 participants, which is better, but still not ideal. 50 people were assigned to use rosemary oil, and then 50 people were assigned to use minoxidil 2% solution. This study was also a little longer. It took 6 months. Sorry, I mistyped here. And the results here suggest that rosemary oil could be could be about as effective as the 2% minoxidil solution. That means that this should be less effective than the pumpkin seed oil, because the minoxidil 5% solution is far superior than the 2% solution in terms of stimulating hair regrowth. Here's what they say in the study. The frequency of scalp itching as a side effect at the 3 and 6 month trial points was significantly higher compared with baseline in both groups. That means that when you use when you use rosemary oil for a long time, it is very likely to cause some irritation just like minoxidil can. Scalp itching, however, was more frequent in the minoxidil group at both assessed endpoints, and this is also a statistically significant difference. So that means that rosemary oil might have a slightly better profile of side effects. You might have some itching on yours. Uh, Sorry, again, COVID is kind of making me very cognitively inefficient. So what I was trying to say here is that rosemary oil has a slightly better profile of side effects, even though it doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to be more effective. It seems to be about equally effective. So then if you prefer natural solutions, maybe rosemary oil is something that you can consider. There aren't many studies. I found one more and a case report. So this is not a something that I would accept as a fact just yet. Just something that is promising to use. And also keep in mind that they use this for 6 months, so it's quite a long period of time. I was also asked about ginseng, and I have to say I heard about rosemary oil and some of these other things, but I was surprised that ginseng can actually potentially help with hair growth. I know that ginseng is widely used as supplement to deal with burnout, exhaustion. It helps improve cognitive functioning, so it's really good for a lot of things. Um, and it's quite safe, and it's been used for over 2000 years in Chinese medicine, so they've had ample time to study its side effects. There is, however, evidence to suggest the ginseng and its metabolites, so substances that are created when you start breaking down ginseng in your body, that they can cause proliferation of those dermal areas where the hair follicles are, and then prevent hair loss that way. Korean red ginseng was shown to increase hair density and hair thickness. So I guess you can say that you can have healthier looking hair. And there was another study that I didn't quote here that showed that ginseng can actually cause new hair growth, but this was not a clinical trial done on actual humans. It was done on hair follicles in vitro in a lab. So I don't know that this necessarily will translate into clinically relevant findings. Here's the conclusion from this article that I put here. It says the following. The promotion of hair growth and prevention of hair loss by ginseng and its metabolites are associated with the induction of anagen and delaying the catagen phases. So it starts the hair growth, and then it prolongs the period in which your hair grows. Technically, this would be nearly ideal, but we really need more studies. Although the underlying mechanisms by which ginseng and its metabolites regulate hair cycling have been explored to a limited extent, further studies, especially focusing on extended human trials, are required to establish this natural remedy for hair loss. So basically what they're saying, from lab evidence, we have good reason to believe that it works, but no human has yet tried it. There was a period of time when I was in medical school and I used ginseng just so that I can focus better and study more efficiently. And I don't remember noticing that my hair was particularly spectacular at that period of time. However, ginseng is harmless and it's available, well, practically anywhere. So it's something that's relatively simple to try out. I was also asked about amino acids, and I found this study. Well, not a study, it's more of a review article that explores different complementary and alternative treatments for hair loss. So they showed that cysteine plus retinol, so this combination, works well to stimulate hair growth. Um, and then L-cysteine, this amino acid, was studied with other additions such as copper or zinc, taken 4 times daily resulting in significant change in hair count after 50 weeks. But 50 weeks is almost a year. So if they do help, the help is rather slow. However, amino acids are quite harmless. Your body will probably be grateful to have amino acids, so this is not something that is likely going to be risky for you to try. They don't tend to have many side effects. However, keep in mind that again, this study has so few patients. It's 29 patients in one group and then 24 patients in the other group. This means that like you can't even use most statistical tests on such a small sample. So it may be promising, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it just because the sample size is so disappointingly small. I always wonder why they can't just recruit a few more people and then have at least something that we can rely on in terms of statistics. Lysine was also tried in combination with iron, vitamin B12, vitamin C, and selenium. And this combination, as you can see, quite a big combination, led to the reduction of shedding. So less hair would fall off in the telogen phase, but it wouldn't induce hair growth. So whereas cysteine might actually increase hair growth, although this is not clear from this review article, lysine certainly will not be helpful for that. This article is also freely available, so you can Google it and read the whole thing and see the quality of evidence and everything. They provided all of that very systematically. One of the things that they mentioned that tends to help is garlic gel. So if you have any desire to smell like garlic, that might be helpful. I believe it was a 5% garlic gel used in conjunction with a corticosteroid, and this did lead to more hair growth as opposed to corticosteroids alone. I, however, didn't find any data that talks about garlic on its own, whether it helps. But in combination, it appears that it has a significant effect. I was also asked about scalp massage and whether that works. People have talked about this in the past in support groups as a competing response, as something that's just pleasant and relaxing to do. And then when I was asked by a couple of people, I thought no way that there's any research on this. So I just started digging around, and I actually found two or three studies. This is the most recent one that I found from 2016. But this only had 9 participants in the study. So I don't know if we can actually even call this a study. It's more like an extended case report. So there's really not much that we can conclude from 9 people. That's kind of like if we sit in the support group and then decide that something is a scientific fact. It's not very reliable. However, this is what the protocol looked like. These 9 participants would receive 4 minutes of standardized scalp massage for 24 weeks. So around 6 months, a little less than that. Standardized scalp massage resulted in increased hair thickness, so individual hairs would be thicker after 24 weeks. They also took a look at the genes that were activated or deactivated through this massage and found that it actually, this is very interesting. I don't really know what to do with this information, but I kind of could not share it because it seems very relevant. It had so the about more than 2,500 genes were upregulated, whereas almost 3,000 genes were downregulated just through scalp massage. I think, like to me, again, like we would need to do more research, see which genes these are, what they do, and so on. But I really like that this is such wonderful demonstration of how our lived experience can actually beat our genetics in a certain way. I every day when I work with clients, you know, whether through TrickStop or in my own private practice, they will come and then declare something genetic and basically condemn themselves to an eternity of suffering because you can't really change your genes. Maybe you can't, but you can certainly deactivate or activate them. So genetics is not always our destiny. In fact, there's a lot that we can do and a lot that we can change. If scalp massage, so the device that they used is one of those, I don't know how you call them, but you can get them on Amazon or nearly anywhere. Those little things that look like upside down trees that you can put on your scalp and then massage it. Like it's that simple. That little thing, when used regularly, actually upregulates or downregulates your genes. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, at least I find it fascinating, but I'm a nerd, so I find all kinds of things fascinating. So this is all that I have for you. Uh, Let me close the poll before we finish up so that I can tell you what our topic will be for next week. I'll share the results with you if you're interested in taking a look. If you have any topics that you would like me to talk about in the future, please email them to me so that I can put them in the poll. Let me see what won. Oh no, again, we're in trouble. We have two winners. We have perfectionism and hair pulling, the sequel to the webinar that we already had, like over a year ago. And then we have breathing exercises and grounding exercises, like a practical webinar. So what I'm going to ask you now, so that we don't repeat the poll, someone type one of these two in the Q&A, and whatever gets typed first, I'm going to declare that a winner. So we have a tie break. So please just type either. Okay, so see, you're typing kind of random topics. So it's either perfectionism, the second webinar, or breathing exercises and grounding, but the practical one when we will actually try these techniques. Okay, it's perfectionism. That's the first one that came up. Oh, sorry, someone told me that I misread this. Uh, don't work when you have COVID. That's the takeaway from here. I apologize. You are absolutely right. I somehow skimmed over it. So it is relapse prevention. I apologize. Um, so relapse prevention is what we will be talking about next month. Now, I'm really sorry that we will not have our Q&A today, but my throat is killing me, and as you can see, I'm not the example of being focused and sharp today. But please email me your questions, but use my email address. If you email our support, they will not probably answer questions related to this because we have a psychologist but not a doctor answering those emails. Email me, Vladimir@trickstop.com, and tomorrow during the day, I've set aside some time to answer all the questions. And we will have, at the end of the month, we will have that standard short webinar where we talk about TrickStop and how it works. And then we will use that Q&A if you want to further discuss this topic, because I really don't want to leave you without the Q&A. I just don't feel kind of focused and healthy enough to spend more time talking. And you know me, I don't know how to stop myself. Also, keep in mind that we have a new discount code now for new users, so you can get $100 off if you use the ProWeb100 code. So next time we'll talk about relapse prevention. Someone said COVID made you funnier, so there's that. Well, thank you. I was actually thinking even about canceling, but then so many people registered that I feel bad. And then I thought, I'll pull it off. And I don't think I said anything terribly stupid. I just maybe wasn't as sharp as I can be. So please email me all your questions. I will answer them tomorrow, every single one. And then we can have the Q&A, I think in 2 weeks or 10 days when the other webinar is. Because that one is short. I usually need about 15 minutes to explain how TrickStop works. And then we can spend as much time as you want talking about this topic. Thank you all for being patient with me, and see you in August, and we'll talk about relapse prevention. Have a nice evening, everyone. Bye.